Welcome back. Today we are talking with Andrew Ziegler on the topic of fear and loathing in the virtual office. Uh, Andrew, lots of good information there in the first segment. The second segment here, I want to focus on employees in the virtual office. Now, I know we quite often look at it when you see reports, management, wants people to go into the office and they see the whole thing as a negative. But I want to ask this question from the employee perspective. What are they gaining from staying at home now, working remotely, that they didn't
So
have before?
yes, I mean we're seeing it not just in this poll, but in study after study, that's coming out, and poll after poll. That employees they want the freedom, they want the flexibility, they want the choice, right, to be able to do their job effectively from the location that they want to, if they feel that they can. In modern society is very complex. Lots of competing priorities, competing for attention. I have four kids. I have four teenagers now, but believe me, for the last 15 years, I absolutely needed flexibility in my work schedule. 10 years ago, if I didn't have the ability to work from home and one of my kids were sick, I would have to take a sick day, and I was limited to the number of days that I could take. Today, that's a lot different. That's way different. I might have to only take an hour out of my day in order to take my kid to the doctor to get checked out, or I may not have to get any time, might not have to take any time at all, right, in order to be able to do that. The commute alone, think about the amount of dollars, the impact to the environment, for that matter,
Mhm.
on reduced commuting time. Most employees are actually report that they will actually begin their day earlier and end it later if they don't have to commute, because they will bake in their commute time into their expected work time that they have. So think about it. All that time that's just spent sitting on the road, staring out the window, maybe listening to the radio, is now either spent relaxing, working on their health, spending time with their families, or being more productive, in the office. So there is a clear preference for most employees to either have the choice to be able to go into the office, or work from home. Now that said, there are still many employees out there who prefer to go into the office. Most are preferring the hybrid arrangement where they can go into the office or have the flexibility to go in the office 1 or 2 days a week and be able to work from home the rest of the time, and have choice around which days those are. That really seems to be kind of the magic mix, not only for the employees but for the employers as well. There was a study that just came out. I think it was published in Inc. magazine that showed that remote employees are just as productive as employees in the office, but hybrid employees are more productive than either. So that
Hmm.
for companies, if they approach it the right way, and if they can work this out the right way, they can actually come out on the other side of this by being more productive than they were pre-pandemic, and happier employees, less overhead costs. There's really a lot of, positives and benefits that can come out of it in the right industry, in the right job, with the right employees and with the right leaders. But it's going to have to take the right attitude and a lot of working together, and probably some experimentation in order for the mix to be just right to actually be more effective for a company.
Just out of curiosity, is there any generational impact here with employees, older employees, more seasoned veterans, shall we say? They want to go back to the office, or they're the ones that want to stay home. And younger generations, everyone picks on poor millennials. So I'm not picking on them, but I'll just use them as an example. Millennials want more flexibility to do not what they want, but be able to do what suits them. So I'm just kind of curious, is there a generational aspect to
So
this working from home too?
I mean, there's definitely a perception of some generational differences. I haven't seen a study. The poll that I conducted was anonymous, so I don't know the ages of people,
Mm,
where they come from.
yeah.
But from some of the comments, you can see, pretty clearly, that they're probably, it's usually referring to, more senior people in an organization do tend to be older. And if it's the leaders who are being looked at as the bad guy, then, you know, by correlation, it tends to be the older generation, which is seen as the less flexible. And I think, logically, if you sort of tease it out, along the way, well, sure, if that's the way that they've always been working and have been doing things the same way for 30 years, all of a sudden having that turned on its head or upended can be scary, because change is scary. And again, that's where it really comes back to, one of the in the title, fear and loathing, right? Fear, and it's fear of change and fear of a new dynamic, and fear maybe in a little bit, in some small ways, fear of the technology, fear of having to adapt to a new way of doing things, I think is some of the concern. And yeah, I think that probably hits more people who are probably less familiar with the technology, who may not have come up with it, or less familiar with that dynamic, being a little bit less flexible and a little bit less able to adapt, sort of the older you get. Because, you sort of cross a line at some point in time of, I'm building a career and I need to be flexible and adaptive, to you sort of cross that line at some point to say, well, now I'm working for retirement. So, many people can fall into that trap, or that, I don't want to say it's a trap, but of the attitude of, I really just I want things to go smooth, for the next 5, 10 years leading into my retirement. And I really kind of want to minimize the disruption as much as possible. So I think there is, definitely a perception out there. But how much of that is based in reality, I really couldn't say.
Has there been any proven drawbacks to working from home?
For sure.
Considering you've already mentioned that, hybrid models and some of these other studies that have been out, productivity is actually either the same or up. So are there drawbacks?
Yeah. So I mean, we see those studies, and I think, there can be some cherry picking going on in some of those
Mm,
studies to kind of say, oh well, it's more productive, or, are they really measuring the right things? I think it's interesting, because, let's see, I just want to read one of the comments in particular here that came out about the perception of employees and what they were doing and whether they were more productive or not. Let me see. Um, there was one quote that was in particular, and it was around uh it was a particular comment around people taking advantage, right? And we talked about this, and a lack of accountability, less accountability, because of the fact that you're not actually seeing the employee there, and exactly what they're doing and knowing what they're doing, 100% of the time, by being able to peek over at their desk or look to see if they're at their desk 100% of the time. So I think it was, you know, I think it really does come down kind of to that lack of accountability, and, why, which people are going to be taken advantage of, or which people may be taking advantage of the situation. Because, and it really does come down to trust. That really is the biggest perception that employees have about leaders, is that they don't trust me. It doesn't matter what you tell employees. It doesn't matter if you tell them, we need more collaboration, or we're less effective. At the end of the day, all that they're hearing, no matter what comes out of a leader or manager's mouth, is one thing: you don't trust me. All right. And that's a
mhm.
big issue. That's the biggest issue that, that we have. They can say things like, here are some of the quotes: managers do not trust employees, lack of trust from leadership. I asked my supervisor why I can't work from home. His response: some of these people take advantage of remote, which seems like a trust issue, right? Now, let's be realistic. Are there going to be people out there that will take advantage of remote if they're not, if they're not being watched over? Well, some people need more structure. Some people operate better with structure. Some people need more accountability, and they need a more structured accountability, protocols within the workplace. So remote work may not be the right thing for them. Or it could be that there needs to be additional accountability tools built into the organization and built into the structure. I've worked at companies in which I have very clear goals and expectations written out, what and how goals. Here is what what you need to achieve and what you need to accomplish. And I was measured, and those goals were, and my progress against those goals were reported back to me. I've also worked for companies and worked for managers who say that they have that, but I never got any goals. It was just, well, just do your job. But it was going to be very difficult for them to prove to me that I wasn't doing the job because it was never written down. So really just sort of following some of the tried and true methods for having accountability in the workplace and having measurable performance and measurable goals, I would probably point to that, point to that company and say, well, what exactly are you measuring? What are you doing in order
Hmm.
to help your employees be accountable? And then not only that, but what are the leaders of those leaders, being held accountable for? Because that's another thing that a lot of people didn't understand. And once we started to point it out, most of the managers, there's only one person, usually one or maybe a couple of people at the company who really are controlling everything on down. And that's like the CEO or the president. Everybody else is, if you're a leader, you're probably also an employee. So most of the people that are sort of getting, getting a lot of this negativity are either the senior leaders or middle managers who are really stuck in the middle. And probably the largest population that we're talking about here is when we're talking about leadership are those people who are on both sides, who are both, listen, I'm a manager. I want to work from home and have that flexibility just as much an employee because I'm an employee and I'm a person, right, with a family and with responsibilities. I want that flexibility as well. But how can I balance that against, I'm getting hate coming up from the employees who are coming down on me when I'm in the same position. But, and I really think it's these middle managers that we should focus on and talk to because they're really sort of, stuck in both worlds. But many of them, they
Hmm.
understand the need for accountability, right? Along that needs to be balanced along with the freedom and doing the right thing for employees. Because at the end of the day, and here's probably the biggest takeaway, and was sort of when I asked, one employee or was having this conversation with someone about accountability, they said, when somebody says I can't trust you, I tell them, listen, I trust you, but I still need to hold you accountable. All right. I
Hmm.
twisted that a little bit around, and I think that every leader should give this message to their employees. Are you ready? If hopefully your audience is ready, and everybody write this down, get out your phone, bring up a note, whatever it is. Here's the phrase on trust and accountability. I trust you, and I need to hold you and everyone else accountable to our customers, owners, and regulators. All right, let me repeat that. I trust you, and I still need to hold you accountable. I have a responsibility as a leader and manager of this company to hold you, me, and everybody else accountable to our customers, owners, and regulators. And I think that phrase, employees can understand that. They can get behind that. That's telling them, I hear you that you feel I don't trust you. I, I, I can only tell you that I do, and I can
Hmm.
prove it in certain ways, but I'm telling you, I do trust you, and I also have a responsibility. So I, as a manager, as a leader, I have to balance both of these things. And it's a hybrid arrangement or making sure that I'm seeing you from time to time, which is our way in order to maintain that balance of trust and accountability.
I couldn't help but think that it's kind of the old traditional way of thinking and micromanaging, which is why they need to see everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Because anytime I've come across someone who's been a micromanager, they're the ones who have to see. They're the ones who get up and walk around for no reason than to just kind of poke their head over the cubicle wall. Make sure you're
Yeah.
there. You know, which makes to me makes no sense because I could be typing away at the computer, I could be reading something. Which one? But both of them are part of my job. But one of them looks like I'm doing something. One of them looks like I'm not.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the main themes that came out of all of these comments was a perception of managers and leaders needing to have control, control freaks. Here are some of the quotes that came right out of the poll. They can't believe people can be productive without their presence. Interesting. It's a mix of old-fashioned viewpoint, again, the age thing, right? It's a mix of old-fashioned viewpoint and attitude, distrust, and wrong, narrow-sighted ideas of work planning, incompetent management in a world where human resources are scarce. Interesting. And then two more. A CEO of a biotech company stated because some of those managers and leaders are control freaks. And there were six, not one, not two, not three, but six individual respondents who replied back in the comments to that poll with one word: control. And that was it. So absolutely, it's the power dynamics and control and power dynamics. It was a major, major theme that I saw without that poll, throughout the poll, throughout the comments. And I think that really leads to a lot of it. We're trying to get behind the reason of why is the perception that leaders and managers are hesitant. A lot of what they're thinking is trust and control issues.
And we're going to talk about more of that fear and the control stuff in the third segment, but I just have one more question for this one. To your knowledge, are there any challenges by industry that we're seeing more of this pushback or more of this uh, demand to go back to the office or more of the need to stay home from financial sectors? Obviously, we can't do it in manufacturing. You got to be on the floor. You
Hmm.
can't do that from home. But
Yeah.
were there any industry specific areas that cropped up more than others that you're aware of where this working from home is becoming more of a challenge or more of a want, a need?
Yeah, actually, one interesting difference that I saw is, not necessarily a particular industry, but in pay grade, in compensation. The companies that tend to have higher compensation, those are the companies that are tending to say, "Now we want you to come in the office." And I think part of that reasoning is we're paying you enough, we're paying you gobs and gobs of money. The least we want to expect out of you, we want you to toe the line, and the line that we're going to have you toe, right, is going to be, we want you in the office. So think about the ones that, are making high profile, right, for coming in. They tend to be some of the highest paid companies that are out there. JP Morgan Chase, Tesla, Elon Musk, Apple, some of the highest paid high tech companies that are out there. So yeah, high tech companies, which are interesting because I've worked for financial institutions for 25 years, and I've worked with a lot of high tech companies as well. They don't all operate out of one single location. There's
Mhm.
one company in particular that I worked for 20 years. I'm not going to mention them, but about 40% of their staff were offshore in different countries all over the place. They've had a virtual work environment for the last 20 years. This is not something new. They have sites and regions and different groupings of people all over the place, and they have had employees working in these remote situations for many, many years. Why now this is all of a sudden becoming an issue? Maybe it's just because you have a place where you can work and you have a place where you can go. I'm not really sure, but these are not new arrangements that these companies have. But yeah, that's I think the direction that we're tending to see is the higher paid industries are the one that are pushing back more and sort of insisting on that return to the office.
Yeah, I have heard from some of those companies you mentioned and others saying that if you do want to work from home, we're cutting your pay.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think I wouldn't be surprised to see sort of a new dynamic starting to happen in job offers and in the marketplace of you're presented with a job offer and you're given three choices, and you're given three choices at three different pay grades. You're told you can come
Mhm.
into the office full time at, I don't know, let's say 150,000 a year, or you can go hybrid, but we're only going to give you 140,000 a year, or you can work from home remote full time, but we're only going to pay you 120,000 a year, right? Three different pay
Yeah.
grades, still offering the employee the choice. Because at the end of the day, that's what a lot of this comes down to of employee perception, is that they want the choice. They want the flexibility and the choice to be able to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
It really hasn't become that popular. Most of the time, people's, pay grades are based on where they're actually located, and, cost of living increases and things like that. I think it's going to start to shift where you're going to see more and more companies offering the choice, but there are going to be sacrifices that are going to have to be made if you want to work from home full time.
Hmm. And
But I
on
think
that
there's going
note,
to be
oh,
an
go ahead.
incentive to work. Oh, sorry. But I do think that they're going to err on it. I think there is going to be an incentive to work hybrid because, again, that's the best of both worlds. You get the most productivity. The companies can still reduce their expense load by, say, having only one building instead of three. But they're still able to get a lot of that collaboration and that effectiveness out of employees that they're really looking for without crossing over to too much time in the office and too many people calling out sick or taking vacation and not coming in when they could just work from home.
Right. On that note, we've come to the end of our second segment. We're talking with Andrew Ziegler today of Fear and Loathing in the Virtual Office, and we'll be right back. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.